The gravel crunched under my tires as I pulled into the circular driveway of my grandmother's Victorian house, the same house where 3 generations of family reunions had unfolded. October sunlight filtered through the maple trees, casting golden shadows across the wraparound porch where I'd spent countless summer afternoons as a child. I grabbed the homemade apple pie from the passenger seat, Grandma Rose's recipe, the one she'd taught me when I was 12, and practically bounced up the front steps. This was supposed to be our homecoming. After 2 years of missed gatherings due to my demanding job at the consulting firm, I was finally back where I belonged. The moment I stepped through the front door, something felt wrong. The usual chorus of Maya's here was replaced by an uncomfortable silence. My Aunt Linda glanced up from arranging flowers, offered a tight smile, and immediately looked away. My cousins Mark and Sarah, who used to tackle me with hugs, were suddenly fascinated by their phones. "Hey everyone," I called out, trying to inject enthusiasm into my voice. "I brought pie." A few people mumbled hellos, but the conversations I'd interrupted didn't resume. Instead, I caught fragments of whispered exchanges that died the moment I approached. My stomach began to knot, but I pushed the feeling aside. Maybe everyone was just stressed about the dinner preparation. I found my way to the kitchen, where the familiar chaos of family cooking should have felt like home. Instead, the women who usually welcomed me into their prep work barely acknowledged my presence. When I offered to help with the stuffing, my Aunt Carol said, "Oh, that's okay, dear. We've got it handled." Dear, not Maya, not honey. Dear, the word you use for distant relatives you barely know. By the time we gathered around the long dining table, the tension was suffocating. I sat in my usual spot between my grandmother and my cousin Jessica, but even Grandma Rose seemed to be avoiding eye contact. Jessica, on the other hand, was practically glowing, her engagement ring catching the light from the chandelier as she gestured animatedly about her upcoming wedding to Brandon, whose family owned a chain of luxury hotels. "Maya," Jessica said suddenly, her voice cutting through the general dinner chatter like a blade. "I think we need to address the elephant in the room." The table fell silent. Forks stopped moving. Even the grandfather clock seemed to hold its breath. "I'm sorry," I managed, my voice smaller than I intended. Jessica's eyes were bright with what looked like righteous indignation. "The lies, Maya. The things you've been saying about our family business. About me. About my engagement." My heart hammered against my ribs. "What are you talking about?" "Don't play innocent," she continued, her voice rising. "Uncle Paul told me about your little conversation at the office, how you claimed I was only marrying Brandon for his money, how you said our family was a bunch of manipulative social climbers." I stared at her in shock. "Jessica, I never said any of those things. I've barely spoken to Uncle Paul in months, and what about telling people I'm not qualified for my position at the company?" She turned to address the table. "Maya's been going around saying I only got promoted because of family connections, not because of my MBA or my actual work." Heads nodded around the table. My Uncle Tom cleared his throat. "Maya, we've all heard the stories. The jealousy, the attention-seeking behavior. It's gotten out of hand." "Jealousy?" The word came out as a croak. "I'm not jealous of anyone. I don't understand what's happening here, honey," my Aunt Linda said, her tone sickeningly sweet. "We know you've been struggling since the divorce, but taking it out on Jessica isn't fair. My divorce, from 2 years ago, that I'd handled with as much grace as possible and rarely discussed with family. I haven't taken anything out on anyone," I protested, but I could see in their faces that they'd already made up their minds. Jessica dabbed at her eyes with her napkin. "I just can't understand why my own cousin would try to sabotage the happiest time of my life. Brandon's family is already nervous about meeting us, and now they're hearing these awful rumors." "Stop." My grandmother's voice cut through Jessica's tears. Rose Mitchell, the matriarch of our family, the woman who'd raised me every summer, who'd taught me to bake and garden and stand up for myself, was looking at me with profound disappointment. "Just stop, Maya." The room spun slightly. "Grandma, you can't possibly believe. I never thought you'd become this person, Maya." Her voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of absolute judgment. "Vindictive. Petty. I'm ashamed." The words hit me like a physical blow. Around the table I saw nods of agreement, looks of pity, expressions of disgust. My own family, the people who were supposed to know me better than anyone, were looking at me like I was a stranger, a toxic stranger they wanted gone. Maybe, my Uncle Tom said carefully, it would be better if you left early this year, Maya. Let everyone cool down. I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the hardwood floor. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my purse, my vision blurring with tears I refused to shed in front of them. This is insane, I whispered, but nobody met my eyes. As I walked to the door, I heard Jessica's voice behind me, soft and concerned. I really hope she gets the help she needs. The last thing I saw before the door closed was my grandmother's face, filled with disappointment and what looked like genuine sorrow. For me, for the granddaughter who had in her mind turned into someone unrecognizable. The drive home passed in a haze of disbelief and growing rage. In the space of one dinner, I'd lost my entire family, and I had no idea why. I spent the first 3 days after the reunion in a fog of self-doubt and confusion. Maybe I had said something that could be misconstrued. Maybe my family was right, and I was becoming someone I didn't recognize. I replayed every conversation from the past few months, searching for evidence that I'd somehow become the toxic person they described. By Thursday, the self-flagellation gave way to something sharper, analytical thinking. I was a consultant, trained to identify patterns and inconsistencies, and the more I examined what had happened, the more the accusations felt orchestrated. The specificity bothered me first. Jessica hadn't just called me jealous or difficult, she'd cited exact conversations, precise quotes, detailed scenarios. She'd known exactly which buttons to push with each family member: Uncle Tom's concern about business reputation, Aunt Linda's sympathy for my divorce, Grandma Rose's disappointment in family disloyalty. Then there was the timing. Why now? Why at this reunion, when I'd been absent for 2 years? If I'd been spreading lies and causing problems, wouldn't this have come up sooner? I grabbed my laptop and started making notes, treating my own family like a case study. When I mapped out the timeline, a disturbing pattern emerged. 3 months ago, Jessica had called me out of the blue, wanting to reconnect after years of minimal contact. She'd taken me to lunch, asked about my work, my dating life, my feelings about the family business. I'd been flattered by her sudden interest, and had opened up about my frustrations with corporate politics and my occasional loneliness post-divorce. 2 months ago, Jessica had started following me on social media, liking old photos, commenting on posts. She'd even reached out to David, my ex-husband, friending him on Facebook. I'd thought it was sweet family solidarity after our split. 1 month ago, Jessica had called again, this time asking specific questions about my work with Morrison & Associates, the firm that had recently landed a contract that put us in direct competition with our family's marketing business. She'd framed it as casual curiosity, but now I realized she'd been fishing for information about conflict of interest. The more I thought about it, the more Jessica's sudden sisterly interest felt calculated. She'd been gathering ammunition, stockpiling my vulnerabilities and half-statements, waiting for the right moment to deploy them. But why? The answer hit me like a physical blow. Grandma Rose's. 6 months ago, at Easter, Grandma had made an offhand comment about updating her estate planning. She'd mentioned wanting to ensure her legacy went to family members who truly understood the value of loyalty and hard work. At the time, I'd thought nothing of it, but Jessica, who'd always been competitive about money and status, would have paid attention to every word. If Grandma Rose was reconsidering her will, and if I was potentially in line for a significant inheritance, then Jessica had a powerful motive to destroy my standing in the family. I thought about Jessica's engagement to Brandon, her promotion at the family company, her perfect life that somehow always needed validation. What if it wasn't as perfect as it seemed? What if she felt threatened by my return to the family fold? My phone buzzed with a text from David. Hey, just wanted to check on you. Jessica mentioned you were going through a rough patch. Hope you're okay. Jessica had been talking to my ex-husband about my mental state. With shaking hands, I called David. Maya, good to hear from you. How are you holding up? What exactly did Jessica tell you about my rough patch? There was a pause. She said you'd been struggling since the divorce, that you were having some issues with paranoia and jealousy. She was worried about you. When did she say this? Last week. She called me out of nowhere, said she was concerned about family, asked if I'd noticed you acting differently, if you'd been saying strange things about people. My blood ran cold. And what did you tell her? I mean, I mentioned that you'd been stressed about work, that you'd vented about feeling like an outsider sometimes. Maya, I didn't realize, did I say something wrong? David's words from our private conversations, filtered through Jessica's manipulation, suddenly became evidence of my paranoia and instability. She'd turned my ex-husband into an unwitting witness against me. David, I said slowly, did Jessica ask you anything else? Well, she did ask about your medication, whether you were taking anything for anxiety or depression. I told her about the sleeping pills your doctor prescribed after the divorce, but that was 2 years ago. I hung up and stared at my phone. Jessica had been building a case against me for months, collecting evidence of my supposed instability from multiple sources. She'd weaponized my vulnerabilities, my private struggles, my moments of human weakness. This wasn't just family drama, this was character assassination, planned and executed with surgical precision, and I was going to make her pay for it. I've always been methodical. In my consulting work, I don't just identify problems, I build comprehensive solutions. And Jessica had just become my most important case study. But first, I needed an ally. Someone in the family who might listen, who had a reputation for fairness and truth-telling. Uncle Robert came to mind immediately. Dad's younger brother had always been the family's conscience, the one who called out hypocrisy and stood up for the underdog. If anyone would give me a fair hearing, it would be him. I called him on Friday morning. Honey, I heard about what happened at dinner. I have to say I'm disappointed. Uncle Robert, please, just give me 5 minutes to explain something, and then if you want to hang up on me, I'll understand. A pause. 5 minutes. I told him about Jessica's systematic campaign, about the timeline, about David's revelations. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line. That's pretty elaborate, Maya. Are you sure you're not reading too much into check your phone? I interrupted. I'm sending you screenshots of Jessica's Facebook messages with David, her LinkedIn activity monitoring, my company, her sudden interest in my social media after years of radio silence. Look at the dates. While he reviewed the evidence, I continued. Uncle Robert, you know me. Have I ever lied to you? Have I ever been vindictive or manipulative? Does this behavior sound like the person you've known for 30 years? The silence stretched longer. Finally, no, it doesn't. Then help me prove it. By Saturday, Uncle Robert had done his own investigation. He'd always been tech-savvy, and his findings were damning. Jessica had been monitoring my professional activities online, tracking my company's contracts, even checking my dating app activity through mutual friends. She'd built a comprehensive profile of my life, looking for pressure points and vulnerabilities. But the most shocking discovery came from my cousin Mark, Robert's son. When Robert casually asked about Jessica's recent behavior, Mark revealed that Jessica had been gathering information about other family members too. She asked me about Maya's drinking habits, Mark told his father, wanted to know if I thought she had a problem. I told her Maya barely drinks, but she kept pressing, asking if I'd ever seen her drunk or emotional. It was weird. Robert had found his own smoking gun when he checked with his neighbor. Jessica had been asking questions about my frequent visits to his house, spinning a narrative that I was becoming obsessively dependent on him for emotional support. She's been building cases against multiple family members, Robert told me during our clandestine meeting at a coffee shop across town. Not just you. She asked your Aunt Carol about your grandmother's financial situation. She's been positioning herself as the concerned family member, keeping everyone safe from various threats. The scope of Jessica's manipulation was breathtaking. She wasn't just targeting me, she was systematically undermining anyone who might threaten her position as the family's golden child. There's something else, Robert said, pulling out his phone. I called your grandmother this morning, not to defend you, just to chat, and Rose mentioned something interesting. Jessica has been visiting her twice a week for the past month, helping with her medications and doctor appointments. My stomach dropped. Grandma's been having health issues, minor ones, but Jessica has been involved, very involved. She's been the one updating the family on Rose's condition, controlling the flow of information. The picture was becoming clearer. Jessica wasn't just protecting her inheritance, she was actively managing it, positioning herself as the indispensable granddaughter, while painting me as the unstable one who couldn't be trusted with family responsibilities. We need more proof, I said. Something undeniable. Robert nodded. Leave that to me. I have an idea. Over the next week, Robert worked his magic. He reached out to David directly, recording their conversation, legally in our single-party consent state, where my ex-husband revealed the full extent of Jessica's information gathering. She'd not only asked about my mental health, but had specifically inquired about my financial situation, my relationship with my grandmother, and whether I'd ever expressed resentment about family money. She made it sound like she was worried about you, David admitted to Robert. But now that I think about it, she was asking really specific questions, like she already knew the answers and just wanted confirmation. Even more damning, Robert discovered that Jessica had been in contact with several family members individually, sharing different versions of my supposed transgressions. She'd told Uncle Tom I was bad-mouthing the family business. She'd told Aunt Linda I was jealous of her successful marriage. She'd told my grandmother I was resentful about not being included in family decisions. Each story was tailored to the listener's specific concerns and insecurities, but the crown jewel of evidence came from an unexpected source: Brandon, Jessica's fiancé. Robert had managed to strike up a conversation with him at a local restaurant, and Brandon had let slip something crucial. Jessica's been really stressed about your family dynamics, Brandon had said. She's worried about this cousin of hers who's been causing problems. She thinks the woman might try to disrupt our engagement party. Engagement party. Jessica was planning a big celebration, and she was already anticipating that I might cause problems that would justify excluding me from future family events. She's planning her next move, I told Robert. The engagement party is going to be her victory lap. She'll use it to solidify her position as the family favorite, while cementing my role as the black sheep. Robert's eyes gleamed. Then that's where we make our move. What do you mean? Maya, she's expecting you to stay away, to slink off in defeat. But what if you showed up? What if you gave her exactly what she thinks she wants? A chance to publicly humiliate you, except we turn the tables. The plan was audacious. I would attend the engagement party as the repentant family member, seemingly broken and ready to apologize. Jessica would relish the opportunity to display her magnanimity by accepting my apology in front of the entire family. But just as she was basking in her triumph, Robert would present the evidence of her manipulation. It's risky, Robert warned. If we're wrong, if the evidence isn't as compelling as we think, you'll be even more humiliated. Uncle Robert, I said, I've already lost my family. I have nothing left to lose and everything to gain. We spent the next week perfecting our presentation. Robert, with his background in corporate training, knew how to structure revelations for maximum impact. We would start with the timeline, then present the evidence chronologically, building an undeniable case of systematic manipulation. The invitation to Jessica's engagement party arrived on a Tuesday, addressed to Maya and guests. The note was saccharine. I know we've had our differences, but you're family, and I want you there for my special day. I hope we can put the past behind us. Love, Jessica. I stared at the invitation and smiled. Jessica was so confident in her victory that she was personally inviting me to my own execution. She had no idea she was inviting me to hers. The 2 weeks leading up to Jessica's engagement party were like watching a master manipulator at the height of her power. Emboldened by her success at the family reunion, Jessica became increasingly brazen in her campaign against me. She started a family group chat, one that conspicuously excluded me, where she shared updates about her wedding planning and dropped subtle reminders about my problematic behavior. Robert, who was included in the chat, forwarded me screenshots that made my blood boil. I'm trying to be forgiving about Maya's outburst at the reunion, Jessica had written, but I'm honestly worried about her mental state. Maybe we should consider an intervention for the crime of defending myself against her lies. The next day she escalated further. I hate to say this, but I'm not sure Maya should be around Grandma Rose right now. Her behavior has been so erratic, and you know how fragile Grandma's health is. What if Maya says something hurtful during one of her episodes? As if I were having psychotic breaks instead of righteous anger. But Jessica's masterstroke came when she suggested that maybe I shouldn't attend the engagement party after all. I know I invited her, but I'm having second thoughts. What if she causes a scene? What if she ruins Brandon's first impression of our family? The family's responses were exactly what she'd hoped for. Aunt Linda agreed that my volatility was concerning. Uncle Tom suggested that maybe some distance would be good for everyone. Even my cousin Sarah, who'd once been my closest ally, wrote, Maybe Maya needs professional help before she can rejoin family events. Professional help. They were talking about me like I was a dangerous mental patient. Robert was furious. She's not just destroying your reputation anymore, he told me during one of our covert meetings. She's trying to have you committed, Maya. She's building a case for your complete exclusion from the family. Meanwhile, I was playing my part perfectly. I sent Jessica a text message that was pure capitulation. I've been doing a lot of thinking since the reunion. You're right, I haven't been myself lately. I'm sorry for any pain I've caused. I don't think I should come to your engagement party. I don't want to ruin your special day. Jessica's response was swift and dripping with false concern. Oh Maya, honey, don't say that. You're family, and family means forgiveness. I think it would be healing for everyone if you came and we could all move forward together. Please don't isolate yourself. She wanted me there. She wanted the opportunity to publicly display her magnanimity while privately relishing my humiliation. The engagement party wouldn't just be a celebration, it would be a coronation, with Jessica as the benevolent queen graciously parting her disturbed cousin. But Robert had been busy building our case, and what he discovered in those final weeks was explosive. First, he'd managed to get David to admit that Jessica had offered to pay him for really embarrassing stories about me. She'd framed it as wanting to help me by understanding my problems, but David realized in retrospect that she was shopping for ammunition. She offered me $200 for anything about your drinking or dating life, David told Robert. I thought she was just being a concerned cousin, but the money made it weird. I didn't take it, but I did tell her about that time you cried about feeling like an outsider in your own family. My private moment of vulnerability commodified and weaponized. Robert also discovered that Jessica had been spreading rumors beyond our family. She'd contacted my former colleagues at Morrison & Associates, expressing concern about my emotional stability and suggesting that my company's competition with the family business was causing me psychological distress. She's trying to sabotage your career, Robert said grimly. She called your boss's assistant, claiming she was worried about you taking on too much work given your recent breakdown. The scope of Jessica's campaign was breathtaking. She wasn't just trying to exile me from the family, she was attempting to destroy my professional reputation, my personal relationships, and my mental health all at once. But perhaps most damning of all, Robert had uncovered Jessica's manipulation of Grandma Rose. Through careful questioning, he'd learned that Jessica had been controlling my grandmother's access to information about family members, painting herself as the devoted granddaughter, while subtly undermining everyone else. She told your grandmother that you'd been asking other family members about her will, Robert revealed, said you'd been calculating about your inheritance prospects. Rose was heartbroken. She thought you were only interested in her money. The cruelty of it took my breath away. Jessica had poisoned my relationship with the woman who'd been a second mother to me, using my grandmother's love as a weapon against me. As the engagement party approached, Jessica's confidence reached new heights. She'd started dropping hints about my expected apology and how healing it would be for the family. She'd even suggested that my public contrition might be a turning point for my mental health. I really think Maya is ready to take responsibility for her actions, she told the family group chat. Sometimes people need to hit rock bottom before they can get better. Rock bottom. She thought she'd driven me to rock bottom. 3 days before the party, I sent Jessica another message. I've been in therapy and my doctor thinks it would be good for me to apologize publicly and take responsibility for my behavior. Would it be okay if I said something at your party? I think it would help me heal. Her response was immediate and gleeful. Oh Maya, that's so brave. Yes, absolutely. I think it would be beautiful for you to speak from the heart. I'm so proud of you for taking this step. She was practically purring with satisfaction. The thought of me groveling in front of the entire family, admitting to crimes I hadn't committed, was her ultimate fantasy. She's walking into our trap, Robert said when I showed him Jessica's response. She's so confident in her victory that she's not even considering the possibility that we might fight back. The final piece of our puzzle fell into place when Robert convinced several family members that they should attend the party to support both Jessica and me during my healing process. He'd framed it as a family intervention, wrapped in a celebration, ensuring maximum attendance for our revelation. Everyone will be there, he told me, the whole family, plus Brandon's family. Jessica wanted a big audience for your humiliation. I smiled. Then she'll have a big audience for her downfall. The night before the party, I stood in front of my mirror practicing my performance. I needed to look broken, repentant, ready to grovel. I needed Jessica to feel completely secure in her victory right up until the moment we destroyed her. Tomorrow, I told my reflection, we find out what happens when a manipulator gets manipulated. The Riverside Country Club sparkled under string lights and late October stars. Jessica had chosen the perfect venue for her engagement party, elegant, expensive, and large enough to accommodate both families plus friends. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables draped in ivory silk, and the scent of white roses filled the air. I arrived exactly when I'd planned to, 30 minutes after the official start time, when everyone would be settled but before the speeches began. I'd dressed carefully, a simple black dress that suggested humility, minimal makeup that made me look tired and defeated, hair pulled back in a way that seemed almost penitent. The moment I walked in, conversations stuttered. I could feel eyes tracking my movement as I made my way to the family table, where an empty chair waited. Jessica's magnanimous gesture, saving a seat for her troubled cousin. "Maya!" Jessica's voice rang out across the room. She glided over in her shimmering champagne-colored dress, arms extended for a hug that was clearly performed for the audience. "I'm so glad you came. You look well, you look like you're healing." "I am," I said quietly, letting my voice carry just enough vulnerability to satisfy her expectations. "Thank you for letting me be here, Jessica. I know I don't deserve it." Her smile was radiant. "Oh, honey, tonight is about forgiveness and family." Brandon appeared at her side, handsome and clearly uncomfortable. He shook my hand politely, but I could see the weariness in his eyes. Jessica had obviously briefed him on my supposed instability. "Maya's going to say a few words tonight," Jessica announced to the table. "She's been doing a lot of soul-searching and she wanted to share her thoughts with everyone." Uncle Robert caught my eye from across the table and gave an almost imperceptible nod. He'd positioned himself perfectly, with his laptop bag discreetly placed beside his chair and a clear view of the room's projection screen. The dinner proceeded exactly as Jessica had orchestrated. She held court at the head table, regaling everyone with stories of Brandon's romantic proposal, their wedding plans, and her gratitude for family support. Every few minutes, she'd glance at me with a combination of pity and triumph, as if I were a rescued animal she'd graciously rehabilitate. When the servers cleared the dessert plates, Jessica stood and tapped her champagne glass with her fork. The room fell silent. "Thank you all for being here tonight," she began, her voice carrying the practiced warmth of someone accustomed to being the center of attention. "Brandon and I are so grateful to have both of our families here to celebrate this next chapter of our lives." She paused for applause, then continued, "Family isn't just about blood, it's about loyalty, support, and forgiveness. Sometimes family members go through difficult times, and we have to remember that love means being there for each other, even when it's hard." Her eyes found mine across the room. "Tonight, I want to talk about the power of redemption, about how we can all grow and change when we're surrounded by people who believe in us." The setup was perfect. She was positioning herself as the benevolent family leader, the one who'd shown grace under pressure and extended forgiveness to her troubled cousin. The audience was eating it up. I could see approving nods, sympathetic glances in my direction, and general admiration for Jessica's mature handling of family drama. "I'd like to invite my cousin Maya to say a few words," Jessica announced. "She's been on a journey of self-discovery, and she wanted to share her thoughts with all of us." The spotlight found me as I stood, and I let myself shake slightly, whether from nerves or rage. The audience could interpret as they chose. I walked to the small stage at the front of the room, acutely aware of the whispered conversations and pitying looks that followed me. "Thank you, Jessica," I began, my voice soft and shaky. I don't really know how to start this." Jessica beamed at me encouragingly, probably thinking I was going to break down in tears of gratitude. "I want to apologize," I continued, and I heard a few approving murmurs from the audience. "I want to apologize for being naive, for trusting people who didn't deserve it, for not seeing manipulation when it was happening right in front of me." Jessica's smile faltered slightly. That wasn't the script she'd expected. "I want to apologize to my family for the confusion and hurt that's been caused by lies and calculated deception." I turned to look directly at Jessica, "and I want to apologize to you, Jessica, for taking so long to figure out what you were doing." The room went dead silent. Jessica's face had gone pale, but she was still trying to maintain her composure. "Maya, I think you might be having another episode." "Uncle Robert," I said, cutting her off. "Could you help me with something?" Robert stood up, his laptop already in hand. "Of course, Maya." As he made his way to the stage, Jessica's panic was becoming visible. "I think we should take a break," she said, her voice rising. Maya, you're clearly upset. I'm not upset, I said, my voice growing stronger. I'm angry, and I think our family deserves to know why. Robert had connected his laptop to the projection system, and the screen behind me flickered to life. The first image was a timeline, 3 months of Jessica's systematic campaign against me, complete with dates, sources, and documented evidence. What is this? Jessica demanded, but her voice cracked on the words. This is the truth, I said. This is a timeline of how my cousin Jessica spent 3 months building a case against me, using manipulation, lies, and strategic character assassination to destroy my relationships with my family. The room erupted in confused murmurs. Brandon was staring at Jessica with dawning horror. My grandmother looked completely bewildered. The first piece of evidence, I continued, as Robert clicked to the next slide, is a recording of Jessica offering to pay my ex-husband for embarrassing stories about me. David's voice filled the room through the speakers. She offered me $200 for anything about your drinking or dating life. I thought she was just being a concerned cousin, but the money made it weird. Jessica's face was now completely white. That's taken out of context, is it? I asked. Because we have more context. We have records of your social media stalking, your attempts to sabotage my career, your systematic poisoning of family relationships. The next slide showed screenshots of Jessica's Facebook activity, her LinkedIn searches, her careful monitoring of my professional and personal life. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. She told our grandmother that I was calculating about inheritance, I continued, watching as Grandma Rose's face crumpled in understanding. She told Uncle Tom that I was bad-mouthing the family business. She told Aunt Linda that I was jealous of her marriage. Each story was carefully crafted to push the exact buttons that would turn you against me. Brandon had stood up and was backing away from Jessica. Is this true? He asked, his voice hollow. Brandon, she's lying. Jessica started, but he cut her off. The recording, Jess, is the recording true? Did you offer to pay someone for dirt on your cousin? Jessica's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Around the room, family members were staring at her with expressions of shock and growing disgust. There's more, I said, and Robert clicked to the next slide. She contacted my workplace, spreading rumors about my mental health. She intercepted family communications to control information flow. She manipulated our grandmother's medical appointments to position herself as the indispensable granddaughter. Uncle Tom stood up, his face flushed with anger. Jessica, did you tell Rose that Maya was only interested in her money? I was trying to protect her. From what? Grandma Rose's voice was small but sharp. From her own granddaughter. The room was in chaos now. Family members were shouting questions, Brandon was demanding answers, and Jessica was frantically trying to explain away evidence that was impossible to refute. The most damning evidence, I said, raising my voice above the commotion, is that Jessica planned to use tonight as my final humiliation. She wanted me here broken and apologetic, so she could play the gracious victor in front of everyone. I pulled out my phone and read from Jessica's text messages. I think it would be beautiful for you to speak from the heart. I'm so proud of you for taking this step. She thought she was about to watch me grovel and beg for forgiveness for crimes I never committed. I continued. She thought tonight would be her coronation as the perfect family member who'd graciously rehabilitated her disturbed cousin. Jessica finally exploded. You're insane, she screamed. You're paranoid and delusional and everyone can see it. This is exactly the kind of behavior I was trying to protect everyone from. But her outburst only proved my point. The calculated sweet Jessica was gone, replaced by someone desperate and vicious. The mask had finally slipped. Brandon, I said quietly, does this seem like the behavior of someone who's been unfairly accused? Or does it seem like the behavior of someone whose lies have been exposed? Brandon was staring at Jessica like he'd never seen her before. I need to go, he said, and walked out of the room without another word. Jessica watched him leave, then turned back to the room full of her family and friends, all of whom were now seeing her clearly for the first time. This isn't over, she said, her voice shaking with rage and humiliation. Yes, I said, stepping down from the stage. It is. The silence that followed Jessica's exit was deafening. 50 people sat in stunned quiet, processing what they'd just witnessed. The elegant engagement party had become a courtroom, and the verdict was unanimous. My grandmother was the first to speak. Maya, she said, her voice thick with emotion, come here. I walked over to her table and she stood up, with surprising strength, pulling me into a fierce hug. I'm so sorry, she whispered against my ear. I'm so ashamed of what I believe. Grandma, you couldn't have known. I should have known, she said firmly, pulling back to look at me. I raised you. I know who you are. I let that girl twist my mind against my own granddaughter, and I will never forgive myself for that. Around the room, family members were having their own reckonings. Uncle Tom approached with tears in his eyes. Maya, I owe you an apology, a big one. We all failed you. She was very convincing, I said, trying to be gracious. No, Aunt Linda interjected, joining our group. There's no excuse. We chose to believe gossip over the person we'd known and loved for decades. That's on us. One by one, family members approached to apologize, share their own pieces of the puzzle, and express their horror at Jessica's manipulation. My cousin Mark revealed that Jessica had been asking him about my erratic behavior for months. Sarah admitted that Jessica had been subtly undermining other family members too, creating an atmosphere of suspicion and competition. She had me thinking you were jealous of my promotion, Sarah said. She kept asking if you'd said anything negative about my work, planting seeds of doubt. I realize now she was trying to turn us against each other. The scope of Jessica's manipulation became clearer as more family members spoke up. She hadn't just targeted me, she'd been systematically creating divisions throughout the family, positioning herself as the trustworthy center, while everyone else became potential threat. Uncle Robert, who'd been quietly packing up his laptop, joined our group. I'd been thinking about this for weeks, he said. Jessica's behavior fits a pattern. She's been doing this for years, just more subtly. Remember when she convinced everyone that cousin Danny was irresponsible with money? Or when she suggested that Mark's wife was trying to influence family decisions? The family began connecting dots, remembering instances where Jessica had been the source of concerning information about other family members. What had seemed like caring concern at the time now looked like calculated manipulation. She was playing a long game, I realized, creating chaos so she could be the solution. The stable one, the reliable one, the one who could be trusted with responsibility and inheritance. Grandma Rose's expression hardened. Speaking of inheritance, I need to make some calls to my attorney. Jessica has been very involved in my financial planning lately, and now I'm wondering what else she's been manipulating. As the immediate shock wore off, practical consequences began to emerge. Jessica's parents, who'd been silent throughout the evening, finally spoke up. We are mortified, my Aunt Patricia said, Jessica's mother. We had no idea she was capable of this level of calculated cruelty. What happens now? My uncle asked. With the family business, with everything, the family business was a significant concern. Jessica held a senior position in the marketing department, and her behavior raised serious questions about her judgment and trustworthiness in professional settings. We'll need to review her role, Uncle Tom said grimly. If she's been this manipulative in her personal life, we need to examine her professional conduct as well. But the most immediate casualty was Jessica's engagement. Brandon's abrupt departure had been witnessed by both families, and the humiliation was complete. Within hours, social media posts about the beautiful engagement party were being quietly deleted, and by the next morning, Jessica's relationship status had changed from engaged to single. The wedding that was supposed to cement Jessica's position as the family's golden child became the catalyst for her complete fall from grace. In the days that followed, the full extent of Jessica's network of lies continued to unravel. David called to apologize and reveal more details about Jessica's information gathering. Former colleagues reached out to confirm that Jessica had indeed been spreading rumors about my mental health and professional competence. Most devastatingly, we discovered that Jessica had been intercepting some of my messages to family members, either by accessing shared family accounts or by positioning herself as a go-between for family communication. She'd been literally controlling the narrative by controlling the information flow. The revelation that she'd been manipulating Grandma Rose's medical appointments was particularly disturbing. Jessica had been using her grandmother's health concerns to position herself as the indispensable caregiver, while simultaneously painting other family members as unreliable or selfish. She was isolating me, Grandma Rose realized during one of our conversations, making me dependent on her for information about the family, for help with appointments, for everything. I thought she was being loving, but she was cutting me off from everyone else. Jessica's professional life crumbled as quickly as her personal life. The family business couldn't ignore the evidence of her manipulative behavior, and she was quietly asked to resign. Her reputation in the local business community, built on her family connections and perceived integrity, was destroyed virtually overnight. But perhaps the most profound change was in our family dynamics. The experience had forced us to confront how easily we'd been manipulated, how quickly we'd turned against each other based on carefully planted seeds of doubt. "We failed, Maya," Uncle Robert said during a family meeting a week after the engagement party, "but we also failed ourselves. We let gossip and manipulation poison our relationships with each other." The family implemented new approaches to communication and conflict resolution. "We established direct communication channels, agreed to address concerns face-to-face rather than through intermediaries, and committed to questioning information that seemed designed to create division. My relationship with Grandma Rose became stronger than ever. She moved me back into her will, not just as a beneficiary, but as a co-executor, a role that Jessica had been angling for. I want someone with integrity making decisions about my legacy," Grandma Rose explained. "Someone who tells the truth even when it's difficult. Someone who fights for what's right, not what's convenient." 3 months later, I received a text from Jessica. It was the first communication we'd had since the engagement party. "I hope you're happy. You've destroyed my life." I stared at the message for a long time, then deleted it without responding. Jessica had destroyed her own life with her choices, her lies, and her manipulation. I'd simply revealed the truth. The family gatherings that followed were different, more authentic, more careful, more appreciative of genuine connection. We'd learned the hard way that trust, once broken, requires constant vigilance to maintain. As for Jessica, she moved across the country shortly after resigning from the family business. According to social media, she'd found a new job and was rebuilding her life. I hoped she'd learned something from the experience, but I no longer spent energy wondering about her motivations or her well-being. I'd learned something too, that sometimes the most important battles aren't fought with anger or hatred, but with truth and patience. Jessica had tried to destroy me with lies, but in the end the truth had been the most powerful weapon of all. The annual family reunion, the following year, was held at Grandma Rose's house, as always. But this time, when I walked through the front door, I was greeted with genuine warmth and love. This time, when conversations paused, it was because people were happy to see me, not because they were uncomfortable with my presence. And this time, when I brought my homemade apple pie still made from Grandma Rose's recipe, it was received with gratitude rather than suspicion. Some victories, I realized, are worth waiting for.